What's good, y'all? So we're back with a pretty interesting episode. We got a couple of my buddies on. Obviously, everybody knows Frankie from Bad MMA Math. He's always on here with me, but I also have Chris De Santiago from a variety of things. He's from Sports Illustrated, from MMA Sucker, and he's got his own thing, MMA Island. So I'll shoot it to you, Chris, man. What's going on? How are you doing? I know you're a man about town. So like, how are you feeling?
Yeah, so I'm actually at the airport right now. I'm in Dallas right now. I'm about to get on a flight to Miami in like the next 2 hours. So yeah, I can't complain, man. It's been good on my end.
Yeah. So he's in my part of town in Dallas. But Frankie, how are you feeling about UFC 299 coming up in Miami? Sugar Sean with the pink shorts about to defend his belt against Cheeto. How you feel about it?
Yeah, I mean, it's not obviously the main event I was expecting, but I actually think I'm really hyped for the card in general. I actually think that this main event is going to be more interesting than people might expect. And, you know, we do get into that a little bit when we broke down the card. But yeah, generally for the card, I'm super pumped. We haven't had too many great cards this year, so this feels like an overload of treats almost, you know. So from that perspective, I'm really excited about it.
For sure. Absolutely. So for this one, we're going to talk about contenders or frauds. And so this actually came from seeing the last card when Muhammad Mokaev had his little fight, and he came out with his hand raised and immediately was like, well, I need to, you know, in 10 weeks, I'm going to come down to Brazil and fight Alexander Pantoja. And I was like, I don't know about that, bro. I'm not sure. And so that's where this idea came from. And so I'm going to throw out 5 different fighters and we'll just kind of talk through them and see what you guys think, whether they're contenders or whether they're frauds. So the first one, we're going to stick in that flyweight division. And this is a very interesting name for a variety of reasons. Now I'm going to throw this one to you, Frankie, first. What do you think about Manel Kape? Contender or fraud?
You know how I feel about Manel Kape. I love this dude. But recent events have made me a little bit worried for him. You know, technically he's so sound. Striking's on point. He's flashy. He's so well-rounded generally. And obviously, we spoke about this before. His personality brings attention to fights. And I think that's going to hold him in good stead in terms of where the title picture might be. If you ask me if he's going to be in title contention or in a title fight this year, I'm going to say yes. But like, there's a few major issues to overcome first. You know, the first obviously being, can he make the weight still? I'm not so confident. You know, he's a very stocky guy for the weight class, and I just don't know if he can actually make it anymore. My second issue, and this is perhaps maybe even a bigger one, is that even if he does make it, you know, skill-wise, I think he's as good as anyone, but he has a kind of an arrogance issue about him that often shows up in his fights. You know, he tends to be somebody who admires his work quite a lot, and sometimes he's not as active in volume and striking as he could be, and against very fast guys at the top of the division that are very skilled, it's a problem. Despite these issues that I've spoken about, I'm going to ride with him. You know, flyweight's a bit of a mess now. You know, as I said, we've got Mokaev talking about having a title fight, and he should be nowhere near the conversation. You know, obviously with Pantoja beating his 2 closest contenders a combined 5 times, I think Kape just needs to win once to get a title shot. And I think despite my reservations, I'm going to keep the faith, and I'm going to say that he gets that win and gets a title fight by default by the end of the year. So I'm going to go contender.
Okay. What do you think, Chris?
So, I mean, the UFC flyweight division is kind of in a weird place right now. I mean, we've seen in the other UFC divisions where, you know, the line is held up like that lightweight or welterweight, but flyweight's a very different case in terms of, I mean, Pantoja's already beat plenty of guys in the top 15. I would like to see some new blood in maybe Mokaev, maybe later down the line, but I think Kape is like maybe one fight away from a title shot. I mean, he would have got it if he fought Nicolau had he not missed weight. I feel like inside the next 12 months, though, with the way the division is going right now, you kind of have to. I mean, I think Kape, he just needs to finish one fight at least. I think that puts him into title contention. So I think contender for sure.
Yeah, I think that the within 12 months part is the part that might get him. He's not, at least right now, he's not super active. We have no faith that he can make the weight. He has to get a win before he can fight for the belt. I don't know if he does all that in 12 months. I have no faith that he can do all of that in 12 months. So I think he's a contender outside of this, but I think he's a fraud right now. That's what I think.
Yeah, because I mean, you got to be professional. You got to make the weight, especially when it's like a title limiter kind of fight. You can't afford to miss weight by a pound or 2 pounds when you're in that kind of position, you know?
Yep. For sure. So, which leads me to my next person, another person who is at the top of the division, but has some question marks about their availability and their desire to fight often, and that's Brian Ortega. He came off of a solid win. Obviously, we all saw it against Yair Rodriguez, but he fought before that. What was it, a 2-year, 3-year gap between him fighting? So what do you think, Chris, about Brian Ortega within the next 12 months? Will he fight for a title?
Yes, that's a very interesting conversation because, I mean, I feel like if Yair won, the storyline with Topuria would have lined up for Spain, but with Ortega winning, it's like, well, I mean, he's proved that he still belongs in the top 5, I believe, but at the same time, he shouldn't get a title shot every time he wins a fight, as we have seen in when he beat Zombie, he got a title shot. When he beat Yair, I don't think he should get a title shot, you know? I think he just needs one more guy. I think that one more guy is Evloev. I think that's a very good fight for the division. Title eliminator, whoever wins that fight, give him Topuria. In the meantime, maybe Holloway, maybe Volkanovski. In the meantime, inside the 12 months, though, I'm gonna say not inside the next 12 months. I just think the division has a good amount of contenders to keep Ortega out from the conversation for the next year or so.
What you think, Frankie?
Yeah, I have to echo a lot of what Chris is saying here. That, as you alluded to, you know, Ortega obviously, you know, he got a really great win against Jair, who looked horrendous, you know, after that first round. Very disappointing from him. I do think Ortega's got a great chin, and I think, you know, we can't speak too highly about his jiu-jitsu game. You know, it's among the best in the entire sport. But again, I'm going to echo what Chris said to some extent. First of all, I think his striking is horrendous, and I think it really is a cause for concern. But more importantly, I don't think that performance against Yair is enough to propel him into a title fight. Exactly as Chris said, you know, he took a beating in that win. We hadn't seen him for 3 years before that. And I don't think we're going to see him for at least 6 months. And I think during that time, there's going to be more moving and shaking in the division, and that someone else is going to step into that spot, potentially Evloev, as was talked about. I think the way that it's going to happen is, I think that Max is potentially going to lose that fight to Gaethje, and then he's going to come back down, and that we get that rematch with Ortega later on in the year. And I mean, if that ends up happening, we saw what Max did to him the first time. You know, stylistically, that was horrible for him. I think Ortega is really good. I think he belongs in that top 5, but the path that I see panning out for him and his inactivity in the division, I can see that being the fight they end up making, given the way the timelines are working out. So yeah, I don't think time-wise he gets a title fight. I wouldn't go as far as to say that he is a fraud in general, but in terms of the context of this conversation, I'm going fraud.
Yeah, do you guys think he fights Evloev, or in the meantime?
I don't think so. I think that, even though I think that that's probably the proper fight to make, I think that because of his inactivity, you know, like they made the commission probably gave him a 6-month probationary period. He's going to give a personal additional 6-month probationary period on top of that, just to make sure his spirit is right. And so I think that I don't even see him fighting, before 9 months is up. So, and Evloev is not going to wait for him.
No.
And if anything, I think that I would see the UFC, if they're going to go to Spain, they need to hurry up and do it before Topuria loses or something like that. Even though I think that he's probably going to stick around for a while, but they want to capitalize on the heat that he has right now. Go ahead and throw Evloev over there now, and do it now. Because, why not? You might as well. Because Yair was the only perfect match for him over there.
Yeah.
So you might as well. Yeah,
go ahead and do it. I don't think Volkanovski's going to fight for a while either. So that takes him out.
I hope
again,
not.
Ortega's not going to be active or not. No, he better not. Yeah, and nobody else is anywhere near close. So I think just based on the way the timelines have matched up and where people are taking their next fight, I can see them giving Evloev the title shot next, and I think it would be in the next whenever UFC Spain happens.
I feel like he probably deserves it, but the UFC is a business in terms of they don't always give title shots to the worthy contenders. They give them to the guys who have the bigger name, the bigger value. I don't think Evloev is there just yet in terms of a name. His win over Arnold Allen is good, yes, but I feel like he might be one win away from, really getting his name into the conversation,
I think it will be more about Topuria, though. I think it's more that they'll just give Topuria somebody to demolish in the meantime. And again, it will be by default. Ortega, he is coming off a win and he probably shouldn't be thrown in there either. But I just think it's the way the division is panning out now. I think they're the only guys who are going to be ready in that timeline. And rightfully or wrongfully, I think that's probably what they will do.
Yeah,
it's just how I see it.
You can't give the fight to Arnold Allen because he's coming off of a loss. Max is probably going to be coming off of a loss, and so you'd have to talk people into it, even though he didn't lose a featherweight. Just assuming that he loses the Gaethje fight, which we
know that fight with Gaethje would be a war as well. He ain't coming back very soon. Whatever happens.
Topuria wants to fight in October. Who's going to be ready in October? Because his show ain't going to be Max. So. It almost like it's by default, like he has nobody else to fight.
For sure.
Yeah, that's how I see it as well. Yeah.
So moving to the women's division, and this is the person that I, a few months ago, I wrongfully said that she was going to be in a boring fight. And I think I've been big upping her since then. It's Irina Aldana. And this is the person that I believe should rightfully fight for the belt. But what do y'all think? I'm gonna throw it to you, Frankie. Is she gonna fight for a belt within the next 12 months?
Yeah, this was another easy one for me as well. I really love Aldana. She's such a dog, such a heavy hitter, really nice straight boxing, and fortunately for her, she's operating in arguably the worst division in the UFC, topped by probably the weakest champion we've seen in a while. And I'm not taking a dump on Raquel. She's a vet who deserves her flowers and deserves her time in the spotlight.
Yeah, love Rocky.
Aldana's. Yeah, I think I feel like I need to say this as well. The leg kicks that Aldana was taking, and her susceptible nature to taking them is a worry. But she somehow seems unaffected by them, which I don't really understand. I just felt like it was something I needed to point out. I think in terms of timeline, I think she fights twice this year, and that they possibly pair her with somebody like Ketlin Vieira, who I'm not sure if she's fought before. She might have done, but rankings wise and timeline,
she knocked her out, I believe.
I can see them doing that fight again, because looking at the division, it's the only one that makes sense. Because we're going to get Pennington and Juliana Pena, and hopefully Pennington beats the brakes off her. And that we get her. And I'd like to see Pennington and Aldana in a fun scrap at the end of the year. Which, by the way, if you remember when we did our video about fights we want to see this year, it's the fight that I said I wanted to see in that division. Yeah. I do want to say one quick thing before we move on to Chris. There is the small issue here with Kayla Harrison entering the division. If she manages to pull off a miracle and make the weight, which I don't even know if it's possible. Her leg looks like it could be a bantamweight by itself. If she somehow makes the weight and wins, she could skip the whole queue. But barring that, if that doesn't happen and what ifs and all that, I think Aldana could get back to the belt, and rightfully so, especially with a win against somebody just outside Pennington. And she should be fighting now. Pena shouldn't be anywhere near the belt, but life is cruel.
Yep. What do you think, Chris?
Yeah.
So I think with the women's bantamweight division, it's kind of like a tournament of sorts, because we're obviously going to get Pennington versus Pena. Pennington doesn't want to fight until maybe later in the fall, maybe as early as August. So with the 12-month time frame for Aldana to get in the mix, I don't think it's going to work out for her, because I think the winner of Holly versus Kayla is probably going to get a title shot, knowing the UFC. And then, so that's 2 title fights in the next, that will probably take up the next 12 months. So I don't think Aldana will get there inside 12 months. Maybe like after that, but I don't see her getting into that title shot conversation in that timetable.
Yeah, it's a tight window. Like, I think it's kind of my hopes and dreams that Aldana gets there, because I feel like if either her or Kaylin Vieira get to the belt, then we'll have a little bit more legitimacy about who the bantamweight champion is. So it's almost like setting the division right. And Amanda Nunes had a point when she said that she would be okay if Aldana was the person that walked away with the belt when she retired. So, but I think that the timelines might mess her up. It really kind of depends on a lot of things to go her way, and I feel like they probably won't, because I do think that Kayla Harrison beats Holly Holm, and she gets ushered directly into that title shot because of what you mentioned earlier, Chris. Like, it's a business, and they're gonna ride with star power above anything. So Kayla's gonna get that title shot above Aldana, but I do believe that Aldana would be her first title defense, would be the person that fights her first.
And then the big question mark is if Nunes comes back. If, let's say Kayla gets the belt, or Pena calls for a trilogy, or Pennington wants a rematch, I feel like Nunes fits into the conversation well to keep the division a little bit more interesting, even though she dominated so many women back in the day. I feel like Nunes could be a wild card in the conversation for sure.
That's true, and that's unfortunate, and I hope she stays at home. Because I hate when these fighters like come back and just let me dip my toe back in and put my legacy on the line one more time for no reason at all, because I've already beat all these folks. But she might. I mean, she's had that interview with I believe it was Megan O'Leary after Rocky got the belt, and she got the itch, and
it was the never say never.
Yeah, I say never.
If the money is right,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, don't do it. Don't do it. The only fight that if I were her, the only fight that I would entertain maybe coming back for would be Kayla Harrison, or if somehow or another they put the Cyborg fight back out there, and that's just because of the money. That would be the only reason. But otherwise, I'm staying at home. There's no reason. You already beat these girls. But the last one, and we're going to go to the big boys. We're going to go to the heavyweights. And this person is fighting, and he's had some lackluster situations happen as far as his fights, but continues to go up the rankings. So do you think in the next 12 months, Chris, do you think that Jailton Almeida will be fighting for a belt?
Honestly, I think Curtis Blades, I think Curtis Blades is going to get this one done. I feel like his wrestling and is really going to play a factor in this fight. If Almeida somehow does get past Blades, though, I mean, also is like the interim title fight with Tom Aspinall. I mean, would that count as a title fight in your opinion?
I think it would. Yeah, I count that as a title. I mean, John Jones is hoarding the heavyweight belt right now, so it doesn't really. That belt is the one that don't count.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like if Almeida is somehow able to get past Blades, I think that puts him right there, maybe against Aspinall. Maybe I know that they're targeting July for a London event, I believe. I could be wrong about that. So unless they want to put Gon in there, so there's a lot of questions, and I feel like Gon would sell a lot better than Almeida would, and it depends on how Almeida performs on Saturday. So I'm gonna say he is kept out of the title fight for now, but I could be wrong about that. I feel like if they're gonna go with the interim title fight, I think it's gonna be Gon versus Aspinall just to sell the tickets.
Yep. Frankie, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, again, I'm going to have to reflect the same sentiments as Chris has said, really. I think that Almeida's going to lose to Blades this weekend. I actually don't think Jolton Almeida is that good. And again, I think, I just feel like he's a little bit one-dimensional. I think he's going to lose to Blades, and I think he's going to get set back a few paces. And again, similar to what Chris said, even if we look at a scenario where he wins, we're not going to get Jones and Miocic until middle of the year at the very least. If Jones wins, he's heading off into the sunset most likely. And if Miocic wins, do we see him before the end of the year? Very, very unlikely. So in the scenario where it's for the full title, I don't see that happening for Jolton one way or another. Again, I think the likely thing is that even if he does win, he probably gets Aspinall for another interim somebody defending the interim title fight, which makes it even more ridiculous. And I think if that fight does happen, I think Aspinall absolutely destroys him. So like, even if he does get there by default for a default belt, I think he'd lose that, and quite convincingly. I think Aspinall's way too good everywhere. I think he's at least as good at wrestling, if not, he'd be good enough in the defense to negate that, and I think he would beat the brakes off him standing. So I think even if he does get into a position for a fraud belt, which is the real belt, really, but it will be seen as the fraud belt, I think he gets dusted up like the fraud I believe he is, and is going to be shown to be on Saturday night.
Yeah, I think that Almeida is, like you said, one-dimensional. And I was hoping that Derek Lewis was going to be the one to expose him, but Derek decided to lay down and take naps in Brazil. But despite that, I think that Curtis is going to be the one that exposes his one-dimensional situations and is able to wrestle him to a victory. But if somehow Almeida finds a way to submit him, because that's what it's going to be. It's going to be a submission if he wins. If he finds a way to submit him, I don't think that they'll even make him. I think they'll make him fight again. I don't think that they put him in the title fight. I think they will, because of what he did in Brazil. He's left a bad taste in the UFC's mouth as a headliner. They're like, okay, well, now you're gonna have to jump through a few more hoops before you get to the belt because of the terrible fight that you had down in your home. So because of that, they're going to try to talk Tom, which I heard that Tom is open now. They were in discussions to have that Cyril Gane fight, which would be massive in Europe. So I do think that fight happens, I don't know, August, something like that, maybe even earlier, July, like you mentioned. And that fight right there is probably the real fight for the belt. And Jolton is going to have to come up with some finishes or something to make himself a little bit more appealing, or he's going to stay in that John Fitch spot for a little while longer.
Yeah, that's how I feel about Evloev too. I mean, I think all of his victories in the UFC are by decision. And yeah. I just feel like when you get to the top 5, you have to have the performance to put you over the top to say, hey, I'm the number 1 contender. I just finished a guy in the top 5, top 10. Give me the title shot. That's how I feel about it.
Yeah. And you know what? Sometimes people do that and they still don't get a title fight. Ask Bilal Muhammad. So It really just depends on who you are. And Jalton is not that guy. Mavzar is not that guy. So they're gonna have to do something else. They're gonna have to figure something out because. But Jalton has a major test in front of him with Curtis Blades, and I just don't think that he's ready for it. So, with that, before we jump off, Chris, do you have anything that you want to let the people know that you got coming up before we jump off?
So I'm excited for UFC 299, my first UFC pay-per-view since, I think, 281 back in New York City, 2022. So I'm excited to get back to work over here in Miami. I hope you guys have a great fight week, and thanks to everybody who watched the stream. For
sure. Frankie, anything from you?
Yeah, just we've obviously got the daily topics that come out that are definitely worth taking a look at. We've covered some really interesting ones, especially over the last week that we did. I think we did one. I think it was some point in last week. I've also got a video coming up in a couple of weeks where I'm heading over to Thailand to see a one card, which I'm debating about whether I should do a vlog on of some description as well. So there's that to look forward to as well.
You should.
Yeah, outside of that, just keep tuning in because we've got videos coming up nearly every day on the channel. So this is definitely one to, and we've got, like I said, we've always got a variation of wacky stuff going on. So
absolutely.
So it's worth checking out. Yeah.
Yeah, so y'all, if y'all haven't subscribed to my channel, Making the Walk, make sure you do that. If you haven't subscribed to Frankie's channel, Bad MMA Math, make sure you do that. And if you haven't subscribed to Chris's channel, MMA Island, definitely do that as well.